after 6.5 hours, the only thing I'm impressed by is maybe Ashley's fortitude. Nothing else is impressive. I said last night when I was asked what the budget will be about, and I gave what I predicted would be the outline, and true to form, it was exactly as I said. And so what we heard today is more of the same old, same old. And if you heard the budget in 2025 and you listen to this budget, they're virtually the same. So if you want to understand impact, look to see whether your life was better at the end of 2025 than it was at the beginning. And that is when you'll understand how much of an impasse this budget was. And then to have the temerity to steal Apple's theme of putting people first is just shameless. But you know, nobody has a monopoly on ideas. For me, my deep concern remains a very troubling report by the IDB that talks about inflation and about rising food costs. And then when you listen to the paltry increases given to public servants, not the public servants, to our old age pensioners in terms of the because we care, we are going to have a problem with hunger in this country. I know it. The figures are telling us that. You see this lack of emphasis on the University of Guyana. There is just so much to unpack from those 6.5 hours. But what I can wrap it all in a neat bow to say is more of the same. More for the friends, family, and favorites of the government, and more of nothing for the people of Guyana. And my heart bleeds because I can look down the line and I can see that it's going to be a very difficult year for Guyanese in terms of weathering the storms and the inflation, etc. that is coming. And particularly because oil prices are falling. And so you have a government that's irresponsibly pinned our economy to our oil revenue. And so they put us smack dab in the middle of the Dutch disease. And I am just deeply concerned. But you know, the modus operandi of this government, how they operate, is that when they can't challenge you with facts, they have to engage in all kinds of attacks and ad hominems and so on. And so Ashley clearly maybe has a Napoleonic complex, I don't know, because I've never seen somebody who could just stand and maybe whip himself into a rage, you know, about absolutely nothing. A lot of theatrics, a lot of drama, and very little substance for the people of Guyana. A number of initiatives announced, but my question remains, how is the government ensuring that the savings is passed down to the people of Guyana? We've heard them talk about shipping rates being at pre-pandemic levels for the last 5 years, and none of those savings are being passed on to consumers. Instead, things are becoming more expensive. You know, you had a classic example the other day in terms of opening hinterland airstrips, and the president having to beg people to lower airfares. Then you also have to deal with the issue of when these increases hit the economy, those prices go up immediately. And so you have a one-off grant, prices go up, but they don't come back down. Yeah. And so there is an absolute mismanagement of this economy. And of course we saw the massive investment in infrastructure, and we know why that is. So for the next few days, we're going to be parsing this. We're going to be breaking it down to the people of Guyana so that they understand what is happening. The PPP is good at gaslighting Guyanese people. You know, Ashley Singh spoke about the previous administration banning old cars and banning used tires. And it occurs to me that if you study any developing modern countries, they do not allow, any developing modern country rather, they do not allow cars of a certain age on the roads because they're directly tied to high accident rates. They do not allow used tires because they're tied to high accident rates. But you know what? he couches this in the manner of saying, oh, they don't want you to drive cars. Instead of engaging in healthy debate, talking about the reduction of CO2 emissions, talking about heightened road safety, being tied to more modern vehicles with greater driver assistance, etc. None of that. And so they have a way that they gaslight people. Oh, they don't want you to have this, but we want you to have this. Notwithstanding what they are giving you is not necessarily in your best interest. And so they talk about the cash, they talk about the transportation allowance, totaling billions, but do they have a comparative study that says that maybe our children are better off if we have big buses on the road on a schedule? There is not that. This is not a studied approach to managing our economy, and the sad reality is that our people will pay for it. But you know, as leaders, we will just have to be there to explain it to them and to make sure that we continue to highlight that elections have consequences. So the PPP and their friends and families are going to become richer. The ordinary Guyanese is going to become poorer. The sycophants and those who believe that they have to bend the knee to this government, I'm sure they will get some crumbs, and we will roll along the way that we have been rolling along for the last year. The question that the Guyanese people have to answer is, when will enough be enough for them?
I have 2 questions. You spoke about the infrastructure budget being so large and how it facilitates corruption. We see a number of grand initiatives being announced in infrastructure. Do you believe that this is the same modus operandi this year?
Same modus operandi. No increased capacity in terms of project execution. And in fact, we all know that executing these projects are a problem. So we do not have the capacity either in the public sector or in the private sector. So we continue to have the same problem. And then our efficiency gap. They're doing nothing to tackle that. They're doing absolutely nothing to tackle it. Understand how this government manages this country. They point to somebody and say, that is your enemy. And they distract you with that is your enemy. And they gaslight you into thinking that that person means you no good. They gaslight you into thinking that they mean you good, so that the mediocre and the bare minimum that they bring to you feels grand. And that is what we have to understand, and that's what people again got to wake up and understand. You cannot continually be gaslit by the PPPC administration.
Yeah, I know that you were responsible for foreign affairs in the last parliament. What did you hear in this budget that is encouraging as relates to foreign affairs and foreign relations?
Nothing. Todd got some more money to do God knows what. I mean, I think the only thing that they can have some pride in is the case before the ICJ, and of course we will continue to support that 100% when it comes to our territorial integrity and our sovereignty. We don't play. But for example, the migration policy. Therefore, Ali has been talking about the migration policy for the last 3 years. There is no policy in place. There's not even a framework for a policy being put in place. And let me say this government is failing to manage migration. I had a citizen, a business owner, share with me a very concerning experience, in that there are a number of these business people who hire, of course, Venezuelan nationals, Cuban nationals, etc. And they had the experience where they hired a lot of these people, and then suddenly all of them resigned as a group, intending to cripple the business. And these are the eventualities that this government are failing to address their minds to. So they do not understand how occupation and employment apathy in Guyanese, coupled with, because people are like, why am I going to work? They work for $80,000 a month. That has to be tackled. That employment apathy has to be tackled. Coupled with this lack of managing who we have in our system, it makes our local businessmen vulnerable. And when I talk about national security implications of a lax migration framework, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Yep. So, you know, in other countries you go, they will have requirements like if there's a Guyanese qualified to do the job, then you cannot hire another. So there are a number of interventions that have to be crafted, but this government is not serious about rolling up their sleeves and doing the hard work. They're extremely good at propaganda. They're extremely good at gaslighting the people of Guyana. They're extremely good at presenting them with an enemy and focusing them on that alleged enemy so that they can get away with the corruption and the graft that they are getting away with currently.
All right, final question. I'm going to tie this in. The minister spoke about low employment rates and job creation, but a foreign investigation would show that a lot of these jobs are not high-value jobs. And how do we? And I'm tying that in with this idea of lowering the cost of living. How are people able to move themselves out of poverty? As we know, the last report saw, 50-something% of our population live in poverty.
50% of our population live
in
poverty.
What measures did you hear that are encouraging to Guyanese?
Nothing. And this is the point. Everything that has been delivered today has been designed to get money into the hands of the wealthiest. That is all. And so it's not about the ordinary Guyanese retaining as much income as they can and having a more disposable income. It is simply about using the people of Guyana as a conduit for the cash to enrich their friends. And so, my brothers and sisters, it's been a long 6.5 hours. There's so much to unpack here. But bear in mind, all the time, compare like with like. You cannot compare an AFC managed economy without oil to what they're doing now. So when they say, oh, Apple hasn't built the gas to shore, yeah, you have the oil money, Starboy. Like, what are you talking about? And they like to get Guyanese caught up in the theatrics. We have got to, if we're going to make this country all that it can be, we've got to stop being carried away by the drama and the showmanship and really engage in substantive thinking. And it is for leaders like me, to break these things down so that the people of Guyana understand exactly what is happening and exactly why, while we see, there's a beautiful edifice behind us there, going up a fancy hotel, but tonight, less than a half a mile away, there are families who are going to bed hungry. Something is wrong. Something is wrong.